Hey, I'm Vera, and in today's video, I'd like to share with you how you can avoid disappointments in relationship. And wouldn't that be great, right? Because feeling disappointed in relationships, just really doesn't feel good. So to do that, I want to do two things. First, I want to share a distinction with you. And that distinction by itself, I think, can really bring clarity as to why you might be experiencing disappointments in your relationships. And then secondly, because theory by itself doesn't really help that much, does it? I'll give you a process that you can use to put this into reality in your relationships. So let's begin. Let's begin with a distinction that's really crucial. And here's the distinction. When it comes to our relationships with other people, we can either have expectations of them or we can create agreements with them. And how are these two different? What's the difference between expectation and an agreement? Well, expectations are often unspoken and they're one-sided. You know, I might expect my husband to be able to read my mind. In fact, I sometimes do. And annoyingly, he still hasn't mastered that capacity. And fair, right? You know, he never made an agreement with me that he's able to read my mind. And that brings me to the other point. Agreements, in contrast, are typically clear, at least ideally. They're conscious, and they're spoken or, you know, expressed in any way, shape, or form. And they're typically consensual and bilateral. It's not just me having an expectation of another person. It's both of us agreeing to something. And this distinction really applies in every relationship. You know, if we look at contracts, they are agreements, legally binding agreements. And of course, you know, we typically don't want to have that in our most intimate relationships, except when we do, talk to your lawyer. But yeah, that's really my point. Looking into agreements and expectations. And I can share with you that generally speaking, agreements were so much better. The thing with expectations is that we all have so many, and they can vary so much depending on your background, how you were raised, you know, what your parents did, your culture, and so on and so forth. So it's really not fair to expect another person to, you know, abide by them, except, you know, like stuff that's common sense, like, you know, I don't know, don't kill me or stuff like that. You know, that's a reasonable expectation to have. So let's move to the second point. And the second point is, how can you apply that in your own life? Well, the first step is to become clear of what your expectations are. And the thing is, often we don't even know what our expectations are. We just know that we're, you know, angry because somebody did something. They violated an unspoken rule we have. So I can give you an example. So this is probably influenced by my German culture to some extent. For me, when I'm driving, I kind of expect the co-pilot to, you know, be in it with me, to keep me company, have a conversation with me. We're in this together. And well, my husband, he's not German, and his take is, well, if I'm not the one driving, I can do whatever I want, whether that's reading on my phone or falling asleep or whatever it is. So we definitely have different expectations based on perhaps our culture, how we grew up. And the key is to get clear on, well, why does it annoy me if he's on his phone next to me while I'm driving? Well, it's because I have the expectation that he shouldn't do that. And then once we're clear on that expectation, the next key is to verbalize that. And just say, hey, I'm noticing I have this expectation of you. What's your expectation in that situation? And after that, the next step would be to come to an express agreement. And of course, express agreement doesn't mean that we get everything we want. It could be having some form of compromise, like, you know, half of the trip we'll do it your way, half of the trip we'll do it my way, or, you know, like some bartering, some negotiation. The key is to find something that actually works for both of you and be clear about what you're agreeing to. So to summarize, one of the main secrets to avoiding disappointments in relationships is to have more agreements and less expectations. Especially in romantic relationships, so much has changed in, you know, like the last decades and centuries, where it's really not clear what people are supposed to do anymore. And thankfully, right? I mean, like expectations were so strict in the past about what you could do and what you couldn't do. And now we're all kind of like free of these expectations, but it also means that we need to find our own way and really discuss with the other person what works for them and what doesn't. So first step is get clear on expectation versus agreements. And then the next step is there's a 3-step process for applying that. Get clear on your own expectations, express them to the other person, and come to an agreement. If this video was helpful for you, I'd love for us to stay in touch. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, or if you're not on YouTube, or even if you are on YouTube, sign up for my newsletter at leaderforgood.com. And the link will also be underneath the video. I look forward to being in contact with you.